My name is Isabelle Chen, and I'm 32 years old. For the past 5 years, I've been known as the wife of tech mogul Alexander Sterling, CEO of Sterling Innovation Labs, the fastest-growing AI company in Silicon Valley. Today was supposed to be his crowning achievement, the annual Tech Pioneers Summit at the Grand Palladium Hotel in San Francisco, where Alexander would receive the Innovation Leader of the Year award. I sat in the front row of the gleaming auditorium, cradling our 4-month-old son, Ethan, as spotlights danced across polished steel and glass surfaces. The stage was set with massive LED displays that would showcase the presentation I had coded and debugged until 3 a.m. last night, right after Ethan's feeding. Alexander stood near the podium in his signature charcoal suit, radiating the confidence that had made him Silicon Valley's golden boy at 38. Everyone in that room saw him as the visionary who built Sterling Innovation from a garage startup to a billion-dollar empire. The man who embodied innovation, integrity, and the American dream. But this morning, I discovered something that shattered that illusion completely. It started with a notification on his phone. I wasn't snooping. The message appeared right on his lock screen as I was setting up his presentation slides. A simple text that made my hands freeze over the keyboard. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about your touch. The sender was Veronica Hayes, his new chief marketing officer, hired just 3 months ago. I had smiled when I met her at the company holiday party, thinking she seemed brilliant and driven. I was wrong about her intentions. The shock hit me like ice water, and Ethan stirred in my arms as if sensing my distress. I unlocked Alexander's phone. The passcode was still our anniversary date. Clearly he hadn't thought to change it. What I found made my blood run cold. Messages, photos, videos, and worst of all, detailed plans to launch a competing company using proprietary AI algorithms I had personally developed during my time as Sterling Innovation's head of machine learning before I took maternity leave. This wasn't just infidelity. This was systematic theft of everything I had built, orchestrated by the man who was supposed to love and protect me. If you're enjoying the story of high-tech deception and the brilliant woman who fought back, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We share compelling stories like this every week, tales of betrayal, resilience, and incredible revenge that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Your support helps us continue bringing these powerful narratives to light. Now, let's see how Isabelle turns the tables on the two people who thought they could steal her life's work. Isabelle, you look a bit pale. Are you feeling all right? Asked Margaret, Alexander's mother, approaching with concern. She reached out to adjust Ethan's blanket. Alexander has been so nervous about today. This award means everything to him. You're so lucky to have such an ambitious husband. I forced a smile, though inside I was calculating my next move. Thank you, Margaret. I'm just going to do a final check on the presentation system. I handed Ethan to her and walked toward the tech booth. As the person responsible for all technical aspects of Alexander's presentations, I had full access to the control systems. Alexander always said, Isabelle handles the tech magic. She's the only one I trust with it. Today, that trust would become his downfall. I knew Veronica's schedule perfectly. Every morning at 10:15, she and Alexander had a strategy call that I now realized was anything but professional. I checked the time. 10:12. 3 minutes. The auditorium was filling with tech executives, venture capitalists, and media representatives. Alexander stood on stage, shaking hands with industry leaders, completely unaware that his carefully constructed facade was about to crumble before the most influential audience in Silicon Valley. I connected his phone to the main display system, something I did for every presentation. But this time, I activated the automatic sync feature I had programmed months ago for emergency updates. Any incoming video call would automatically display on the massive screens behind him. 10:14. The lights dimmed slightly. Alexander adjusted his microphone, flashing that confident smile that had once made me believe I was the luckiest woman in the world. 10:15. His phone buzzed. The screens lit up with Veronica's face, her hair tousled, wearing nothing but a silk robe that barely covered her shoulders. She was in what looked like a luxury hotel room, clearly expecting their usual private video call. Good morning. Gorgeous, she purred, her voice echoing through the sound system. I'm still tingling from our night at the Four Seasons. Did you see the final client list I sent? Once we launch our new company, we'll have everything we need. Alexander's face went white. He spun around to see his affair broadcast in crystal-clear 4K resolution to 800 of the tech industry's most powerful people. Veronica, and the call, he shouted into his microphone, but she couldn't hear him clearly through the feedback. She continued, oblivious to the disaster unfolding. The AI algorithms Isabelle developed are pure gold. She has no idea we've been copying them. Once she signs the intellectual property transfer papers you prepared, we'll have legal ownership of everything. Your wife really is as naive as you said. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. Camera flashes erupted. The tech journalists in attendance were frantically typing on their phones and laptops. I stood calmly at the back of the room, watching 5 years of lies unravel in real time. Alexander looked desperately toward me, his eyes pleading for help, for intervention, for anything that might save him. Instead, I activated the secondary display I had prepared. The screen split, showing not only Veronica's ongoing confession, but also a detailed breakdown of the stolen code, timestamped emails between Alexander and Veronica discussing the theft, and financial documents showing they had already secured preliminary funding for their venture using my stolen work. The best part, Veronica continued on screen, still unaware of her audience, is that she'll never suspect anything. She's too busy playing mommy to notice what's happening right under her nose. The silence in the auditorium was deafening. Margaret Sterling, still holding Ethan, stared at her son with an expression of horror and disbelief. Dr. Patricia Morrison, the summit's organizer and Alexander's longtime mentor, stepped onto the stage. Her voice cut through the chaos with surgical precision. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's clear that today's presentation will not proceed as planned. She turned to Alexander, who stood frozen like a deer in headlights. Alexander, I suggest you address this situation immediately, both personally and legally. Alexander finally found his voice, though it cracked with desperation. This is all a misunderstanding. Technical difficulties. Isabelle, tell them this is some kind of system malfunction. Every eye in the room turned to me. I walked slowly down the center aisle, my heels clicking against the marble floor. When I reached the stage, I took the microphone from Alexander's trembling hands. There's no malfunction, I said clearly. Everything you've seen today is real. My husband and his CMO have been stealing my proprietary AI algorithms for months, planning to use them to launch a competing company while I was on maternity leave. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Investors pulled out their phones to check their portfolios. Security guards moved to block the exits as several attendees tried to leave. I continued, my voice steady and strong. For those wondering about the technical aspects of what you've witnessed, I programmed this system myself. Every email, every document, and every timestamp has been verified through blockchain authentication. This isn't just adultery, it's corporate espionage of the highest order. Alexander grabbed my arm. Isabelle, please. We can work this out privately. Think about Ethan. Think about our family. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. The charm that had once swept me off my feet now seemed hollow. The intelligence I had admired was revealed as mere cunning. I am thinking about Ethan, I replied. I'm thinking about the world I want him to grow up in. One where theft and betrayal have consequences. Dr. Morrison approached the microphone. Given the serious nature of these allegations, Sterling Innovation Labs Award will be suspended pending a full investigation. Security will escort Mr. Sterling and Ms. Hayes from the premises. As security moved toward the stage, Alexander made one last desperate play. You'll never prove anything in court, Isabelle. It's your word against mine. I smiled for the first time that morning. Actually, Alexander, it's not. I activated the final screen, revealing something that made his face go ashen. Did you forget that I built the security protocols for Sterling Innovation's entire network? Every email, every file transfer, every late-night access to the development servers. I have records of everything, including the fact that you've been selling our client data to competitors for the past 6 months. The corporate espionage was devastating enough, but data trafficking was a federal crime. FBI agents, who had been discreetly positioned around the auditorium after I contacted them 3 days ago, moved forward to place Alexander under arrest. The events that followed moved with startling speed. Within hours, news of the Sterling Innovation scandal had spread across every major tech publication. Hashtag SterlingGate became the top trending topic on social media. Alexander and Veronica were arrested on charges of corporate espionage, intellectual property theft, and data trafficking. But for me, the most important moment came when I sat down with the FBI's cybercrime unit to provide testimony. Agent Isabelle Chen, no relation, despite the name, was a no-nonsense woman who specialized in tech crimes. Mrs. Sterling, or would you prefer Dr. Chen? I see you kept your maiden name professionally. Dr. Chen is fine, I replied. I earned that PhD in computer science long before I met Alexander. Your evidence is extraordinarily comprehensive, Agent Chen said, reviewing the files I had provided. How long have you been gathering this information? I've been documenting irregularities for months, but I didn't understand the full scope until I saw those messages this morning. As head of the AI development team, I noticed unusual access patterns to our servers. Files being copied, algorithms being modified, security protocols being bypassed. And you built all the systems that caught this activity? Every single one. Ironic, isn't it? Alexander always said I was too detail-oriented, too focused on security protocols. He called it paranoia. Turns out it was protection. Agent Chen smiled grimly. Your paranoia is going to put several people in federal prison. The legal proceedings moved quickly. The evidence I had gathered was overwhelming, and both Alexander and Veronica's lawyers advised them to accept plea bargains rather than face trial. Alexander received 8 years in federal prison for corporate espionage and data trafficking. Veronica got 6 years as a co-conspirator. But perhaps the most satisfying outcome was what happened to Sterling Innovation Labs itself. 3 weeks after Alexander's arrest, the board of directors held an emergency meeting. I attended as both a major shareholder, something Alexander had forgotten when he gave me equity as a wedding gift, and as the only person capable of salvaging the company's damaged reputation. Board Chairman David Kim addressed the room with characteristic directness. We face a simple choice: fold the company and liquidate assets, or rebuild under new leadership. Given the circumstances, I believe there's only one person qualified to lead that rebuilding effort. All eyes turned to me. Dr. Chen, would you consider taking over as CEO of Sterling Innovation Labs? The offer wasn't entirely unexpected. I held patents on most of the company's core AI technologies. I had relationships with key clients that predated my marriage to Alexander. Most importantly, I was the only one who could restore trust with investors and partners who had been shaken by the scandal. I'll accept, I said, under certain conditions. Which are? First, we implement the most comprehensive corporate ethics program in Silicon Valley. Second, we establish a whistleblower protection fund to encourage employees to report misconduct. Third, we restructure executive compensation to prioritize long-term value over short-term gains. David Kim nodded approvingly. Done. When can you start? I already have. 6 months after taking over as CEO, Sterling Innovation Labs, now rebranded as Chen Innovation Solutions, had not only recovered from the scandal but emerged stronger than ever. Our stock price had reached an all-time high. We had signed contracts with 3 Fortune 500 companies that had initially pulled out after the scandal. Most importantly, we had become a model for ethical leadership in the tech industry. I stood in my new corner office, looking out at the San Francisco Bay, when my assistant knocked on the door. Dr. Chen? There's someone here to see you. She says it's personal. Margaret Sterling walked in, looking older and more fragile than I remembered. She was carrying a small gift bag. Isabelle, I hope you don't mind me coming by. I wanted to apologize for my son's actions and to give you this. Inside the bag was a handmade baby blanket, soft blue with intricate patterns. I made it for Ethan, she said quietly. I know I have no right to ask, but I hope someday he might know that his grandmother never approved of what his father did. I was touched by the gesture and by the pain in her eyes. Margaret, you're not responsible for Alexander's choices. You're welcome to see Ethan whenever you'd like. She began to cry softly. I raised him better than this. I don't know where I went wrong. You didn't go wrong. Alexander made his own choices. But Ethan deserves to know his grandmother, and you deserve to know your grandson. After Margaret left, I returned to work with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. My phone buzzed with a text from my nanny that Ethan had just said his first word, Mama. I smiled, remembering how Alexander used to say that my career would suffer because of motherhood, that I'd never be able to balance both successfully. He was wrong about that, just as he'd been wrong about so many things. That evening, I picked up Ethan from daycare and drove to our new home in Marin County, a beautiful craftsman house with a garden where he could play safely. No more minimalist penthouse designed to impress investors. This home was warm, comfortable, and entirely mine. As I gave Ethan his bath, he grabbed my finger and looked up at me with eyes that held so much trust, so much love. I made him a promise then. He would grow up in a world where honesty mattered, where hard work was rewarded, and where people faced consequences for their actions. Later that night, after Ethan was asleep, I sat in my home office reviewing plans for Chen Innovation's next product launch. We were developing an AI ethics framework that would be open source, available to any company that wanted to implement ethical guardrails in their technology. My laptop chimed with an email from Dr. Morrison, who had become a mentor and friend since the summit incident. "Isabelle," she wrote, "I've been asked to recommend speakers for next year's Tech Pioneers Summit. The theme is building trust in technology. I can't think of anyone more qualified than you to deliver the keynote address. Are you interested?" I smiled as I typed my response. I'd be honored. Returning to that same stage where my old life had ended and my new one began would be the perfect way to share what I'd learned. That integrity isn't just good ethics, it's good business. A year later, I stood on that familiar stage at the Grand Palladium Hotel, but everything was different. The spotlight illuminated me not as someone's wife, but as Dr. Isabelle Chen, CEO of Chen Innovation Solutions, named to Forbes 30 Under 30 list and recognized as one of the most influential women in technology. The auditorium was packed with many of the same faces that had witnessed Alexander's downfall, but now they looked at me with respect, admiration, and genuine interest in what I had to say. A year ago, I stood in this same auditorium. I began, not as a speaker, but as a spectator to one of tech's biggest scandals. Many of you witnessed my husband's arrest for corporate espionage and the collapse of everything he had built on lies and theft. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Today, I want to talk about what we built from those ashes. Not just a company, but a new model for how technology companies can operate with transparency, ethics, and genuine respect for innovation. I clicked to my first slide, showing Chen Innovation's growth metrics. When people ask me how we recovered so quickly from the scandal, I tell them it wasn't recovery, it was revelation. We discovered that when you remove deception and ego from the equation, extraordinary things become possible. I spent the next 40 minutes detailing our journey, how we implemented radical transparency in our operations, how we shared profits with employees at every level, how we open-sourced critical technologies to benefit the entire industry. But the most powerful moment came when I addressed the personal cost of the betrayal. I won't pretend that discovering my husband's betrayal wasn't devastating. But it taught me something invaluable. Our greatest strength often emerges from our deepest wounds. The skills I developed to expose his crimes, attention to detail, systematic thinking, unwavering ethics, are the same skills that made our company successful. After my speech, as the audience gave me a standing ovation, I thought about how dramatically my life had changed. Ethan, now 15 months old, was backstage with my nanny, probably charming everyone with his infectious giggle. Margaret Sterling had become a regular presence in our lives, helping with childcare and bringing the kind of grandmotherly wisdom that Ethan needed. She never spoke about Alexander unless I brought him up, respecting the boundaries I had set while maintaining her relationship with her grandson. Alexander himself had become irrelevant to my story. I received updates through legal channels about his prison sentence, but I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just complete indifference. He had become a cautionary tale, a reminder of how brilliant people can destroy themselves through greed and ego. Veronica had been released early for good behavior and cooperation with other investigations. I heard she was working at a small marketing firm in Portland, starting over under her real name. I felt sorry for her, actually. She had been seduced not just by Alexander, but by the illusion of easy success. The media had tried to frame our story as a tale of revenge, but they missed the point entirely. Revenge implies that I acted out of anger or hatred. In reality, I acted out of principle. Justice isn't revenge. It's simply ensuring that actions have appropriate consequences. As I walked off the stage that night, Dr. Morrison approached me with a warm smile. "Magnificent speech, Isabelle. You've truly become the leader this industry needs. Thank you, Patricia. Though I have to admit, I never imagined my life would take this path. The best leaders rarely do, she replied. They're too busy focusing on doing the right thing to worry about personal glory. That night, I drove home through the winding roads of Marin County, thinking about the future. Chen Innovation was expanding internationally. We had partnerships with universities around the world. Our AI ethics framework was being adopted by companies across multiple industries. But more importantly, I was raising a son who would grow up understanding that success without integrity is worthless, that brilliance without ethics is dangerous, and that true strength comes from lifting others up rather than tearing them down. When I tucked Ethan into his crib that night, he looked up at me with those trusting eyes and said, "Mama, good." "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered, kissing his forehead. "Mama is good. And so are you. And tomorrow is going to be even better." As I stood in his doorway, watching him sleep peacefully, I realized that Alexander's betrayal had given me the greatest gift possible, the chance to discover who I really was when I stopped being who I thought I should be. I was no longer Alexander Sterling's wife, or Sterling Innovation's head of development, or even the victim of a corporate scandal. I was Dr. Isabelle Chen, technologist, CEO, mother, and living proof that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. And as I turned off the lights and headed to my own room, I knew that whatever challenges tomorrow brought, I was ready for them. Because I had learned the most important lesson of all: when you build your life on truth, integrity, and genuine care for others, it becomes unshakable. No one could ever take that away from me again. Isabelle's journey from betrayed wife to tech industry leader shows us that our greatest disasters often become our most powerful catalysts for growth. Her story reminds us that intelligence, ethics, and determination are an unstoppable combination. What did you think of how Isabelle handled the betrayal? Was her systematic approach to exposing Alexander justified, or should she have confronted him privately first? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories of resilience, justice, and the amazing transformations that happen when people refuse to be victims. Every story we tell celebrates the strength of the human spirit and the power of choosing integrity over convenience.